Everybody, hi. I wish to offer you a very, very warm welcome. I'm Lynn Jackson, I'm church warden here at Eam Parish Church. Just a few bits of housekeeping and then I will hand you over to Les, who is going to MC this evening for you. So the toilets are at the back. Fire exits in the event of a fire, which we're not going to have a fire. Either exit, if it's safe to do so, by the normal door that you came in through, and if not, there are two fire exits behind me, one on the right and one on the left. Just follow those who know. So I'll hand you over now to Les, who is going to talk to you and MC for us. Thanks, Les.
MC, it sounds as though I'm going to a disco, doesn't it? Yeah, well, you never know. I normally only do it when I'm wearing a dress, though. I hasten to say that's for the pantomime at Eam, and for no other reason, private or otherwise. Okay, good evening, everybody. I'm not going to take up much of your time because it's the candidates we've come for tonight. We've already, and this is a warning to the candidates, received lots of material, haven't we? I've got loads of it. Pamphlets, leaflets that come through the door. Even the Prime Minister sent me a personal letter, so to send it to me, he must be desperate. So there we are. That's a neutral political comment, is that. The candidates are seated in a random order. There's no particular significance where they're seated. It was drawn by lots. We have, of course, well, they'll get their opportunity to introduce themselves. The questions have been sent in. We have quite a number of questions. I will endeavour to get as most, if not all, of the questions in as possible. That is very much dependent on the candidates, that they answer the questions that have been asked of them and not the ones that they wish had been asked to them. And also, because we've seen the television programmes, we've seen the interviews, we've read the literature, what we're interested in is them and what they've got to say. We're not interested in them telling us what the other people haven't done. I think we're interested in what they are going to do and what their proposals are. And I'm sure, because they've always behaved, the candidates in previous occasions when they came here, that it will be a productive evening. Helen at the back has a microphone. Those who submitted questions, we would appreciate, because it gives you your involvement, if you would ask your own question. If you can't remember it, we can get a copy for you in any event. All right. There may be one that I might have to read myself from an absentee. If you wish your question initially to go to a specific candidate, please say so. That candidate will then be the first to answer. The others, if they so wish, get an opportunity also to make their observations or comments on the question. We're not looking for long questions. We want answers to the specific questions, and if necessary, I'll cut you off. If I don't do it, John will switch the microphone off, and therefore it'll be just like being at home and talking. All right, very well. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give each candidate an opportunity, and they can do that by answering the first question, which in fact was submitted by John Plant. Is John with us? It's a nice short question. Yes, John.
Sorry. Too much. This is a point too much. Thank you. How many of the candidates live at home in Derbyshire? And are you all involved in your local community?
It's a nice subtle question, isn't it? Do you live here, and what do you do when you're here apart from being candidates and working in the constituency? That also, and that's why I say, gives you an opportunity when you're answering this question also to let everybody know you are. Some of you we know, others we have had the pleasure of meeting for the first time tonight. So let us know who you are, and if you like, how can I put it politely, let's have your slogan or your soundbite as to that's what you are But we don't want a party speech. We just want to know what you is your primary thing. And that's your opportunity. I forgot to say that so far as you are concerned, Mr. Buckley, you are a substitute for one of the candidates. We're very grateful you come, and you can express the views, no doubt, that she would have done so. Thank you very much indeed. I think this time we can just start in numerical order. It helps. Sarah. Oh, they're giving me permission to be very personal and just use their first name. I'm not used to it. I'm old-fashioned, but there we go. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you very much, Les. Thank you for the invitation to come to this Hustings. Hustings are the most fun bit of the campaign as far as I'm concerned. And it's a pleasure to have a lovely cup of tea when you come. We've all appreciated that. It settles everyone's nerves and it's good fun. So the first question was, where do I live at home? Is it in the constituency? It's a question I'm asked all the time. Of course, as a new MP, when I was an MP, obviously we're all just candidates now, I was asked that all the time. When I was selected in November 2019, I made a promise that I would move to the constituency, and I did. So I was an outsider, but like many of you who I know have written to me, and I see some familiar faces here, like you, I've been new to the Dales. However, I do love the Dales. So I live in a little village outside Ashbourne. I'm embedded in the community. I know all the farmers there. I buy my meat from the butcher who sadly has just closed for health reasons. I help with well dressings. I know a lot of the elderly people, and I'm involved in supporting people in the Royal Chaplaincy. So if you want a little sound bite about me, it is about community and about country and about looking after people who are needing help in a difficult time. And the joy of being a candidate here is that one of us, apart from Matt, of course, one of us is going to be the Member of Parliament and we'll have the joy of doing what I've done, which is talking and helping people. Just to give you a little bite of the job ahead, I've had over 50,000 emails, of which a good manner of those are very serious issues. So it's about experience, and that's what I offer to you, experience and service.
Thank you very much indeed. Yes.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Helen Weatherall, and thank you to the church for arranging this hustings. I'm a Derbyshire lass. I was born in Ashover, and I've come back and now live in Ashover, just over the border with the constituency just north of Tansley. I have a deep love of Derbyshire and its countryside, its beautiful countryside. I'm a district councillor in North East Derbyshire, and I am a member of the Pathways and Bridleways Committee. I'm a member of the Derbyshire Smallholders Association, and I'm an active member of Back British Farming. My commitment to you, should you choose to vote for me as your MP, would be to clean up politics, modernise our democracy and fight corruption. I've never done anything like this before in my life. I'm doing this because I believe that we can do better politics. We can do better governance and better government. I've worked in local government for about 40 years and in education. I've been an assistant director children's services, and I have 4 grandchildren and another one on the way. And I'm passionate about cleaning up our act as a country, and I want the opportunity to have a go. Thank you. Oh, yes, sorry. I'm a member of a very small pioneer party called the True and Fair Party, and we hope to do exactly as it says on the tin.
Depends on the size of the tin, really, doesn't it? Yes, Robert.
My name's Robert Court. I am the Liberal Democrat candidate, as you can probably tell from this. We live extremely close to where we're in this building. We live about a mile away in the beautiful village of Fulo. This is our church, so I am on home territory. I'm also a governor of Eames School, which is, please don't throw the stone, but it is about a stone's throw from this church. And right, just let your mind boggle slightly at this. And in Derbyshire, I play indoor walking cricket. And actually for Derbyshire. And at Lord's, we were the county champions. Not a lot of people know that. A few more do now. And for me, I got into this because I looked at the state of our politics and our public life, and I thought, something needs doing. Well, let's see what I can do. And we do need to do something about seeing respect, mutual respect in politics, and I'd like to see trust, truth, and integrity restored as well, while at the same time, if elected, serving and caring for this community of Derbyshire Dales.
Robert? Yes.
Good evening,
Edward.
everybody. It's a real pleasure to be in this wonderfully historic church here in Eyam. I'm Edward Oakenfull. I'm the Reform candidate for Derbyshire Dales. My connection to Derbyshire is I was born in Derby Hospital 57 years ago. I've pretty much lived in the county all my life. At the moment, I live just 2 miles out of the actual constituency, but still in Derbyshire. And for 12 years, I used to live in Hilton, which, because of the boundary changes, has just come into Derbyshire Dales. I've been a keen sportsman all my life, and I've represented Derbyshire at tennis for many decades now. I've captained Derbyshire, and I've even captained England in a Senior Four Nations competition. I have 2 sons. They're, again, local in Derbyshire, although one's actually away in Germany for a short period, but with work commitments, he will be back. And the reason I'm here is because I despair at what's happened to our country. I'm very much from a business background, and just the way our country's been run into the ground with the high taxes. We're paying the highest taxes since the Second World War. What are we getting for this money? I can't think of any public service that I'm confident in that's doing well. I'm here to reform the system, not just to tinker around the edges and change the way everything is run in our country. Thank you.
Thank you. It is excellent to be here in historic Eyam. My name is John Whitby. I'm the Labour Party candidate, and I have lived in Derbyshire all my life. I do live in Derby, and obviously what a fabulous place to live. In terms of my background, I used to be in a professional rock band, but that's not particularly relevant to running an election. But I became a foster carer 24 years ago. I've been a civil servant for a similar amount of time. I was a councillor. I'm a councillor on Derby City Council and got elected in 2010. I think I've always been interested in politics. The thing that has driven me really from when I got first elected was I wanted to convince people that some people are in this for the right reasons. When you say about a soundbite, for me it really would be a public service. I was the mayor of Derby in 2017 to 18. I raised, I think, more money than anyone's ever raised for children's charities before as the mayor, and I raised the profile, at least I tried to, of environmental issues while I was the mayor, and of course fostering. So they are my main objectives. Politics is all about representation. If I'm fortunate enough to be elected here, it's not all about me telling you what I'm going to do. There's just as much of you telling me what you want me to do for you. And that's hopefully what I'll do. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Matthew, you're happy to speak on behalf of...
Yes. So my name's Matt Buckler. I have been here before. I was at Hustings in 2017 and 2019 as a candidate, and I'm speaking on behalf of Kelda Boothroyd, who is one of my Derbyshire Dales District Council colleagues. She's the District Green Party councillor for Great Longston and Carver and Great Longston. Kelda's moved, but I'm going to speak about Kelda. So Kelda's moved, Kelda's based in the Derbyshire Dales. She's really committed to the community of the Derbyshire Dales. She's bringing up a young family. Kelda's somebody who's, she's she's the youngest councillor we've had for some time after the and has young children who she's choosing to bring up in Derbyshire Dales, and I think she's made a real commitment to being here, and that sort of community is what she's trying to do, and Kelda's standing because she thinks that we need to have real hope, real change, which is what the Green Party is standing for at this election.
Thank you very much indeed. And Rachel.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rachel Elnor Love, and I'm standing as an independent candidate. Now, I moved to Bakewell in 2006. I have 5 sons, and they've all been educated in Derbyshire Dales. Now, my background is business. I started the Experiences brand Red Letter Days, which I grew from nothing into a multi-million turnover business, which got me on Dragon's Den. I was on the first 2 series. And that opened me to being a mentor, and I've mentored many thousands of entrepreneurs and small business owners over the past 20 years or so. And the reason why I'm standing here in front of you today, the reason why I've got involved in politics is because I saw the devastation that was being caused to small businesses. I'm a great supporter of independent businesses. I could see the devastation that was happening in 2020. And because of my business experience, I could also see the big corporate forces that were behind what actually happened. And the story that we were told has been unraveling very fast. So since 2020, I have been speaking out. I've sent multiple letters to Sarah Dines questioning lockdowns, questioning all of the policies that were so devastating. And as I said, that narrative is unraveling. So as an independent, I am standing here to be truly a voice for the people and not big corporations, because if you follow the mainstream media, who are also owned by big corporations, there are only 2 choices, red or blue. But I'm here to tell you that both Labour and Conservative are both cheeks of the same backside. I'll say that politely, unlike George Galloway. They're both aligned to big corporate interests. I am here to be a voice for the people. I don't present any big manifesto because I want to listen to the people and be your voice in Westminster to vote and speak in accordance with your wishes and not in accordance with big corporate interests. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't think there's any basis for any supplementary questions arising from that. We'll get into the main questions now. Jill Wakeman. Jill with us. Thank you. Just a moment, Jill, and Helen will give you a microphone.
Oh dear, mic as well. Thank you. Okay. Need to put my glasses on. Right, my question, I might read it because I don't like speaking in front of people. I've not. Is it nearer?
That's better.
How can the problems with our local public transport be solved with the Conservative policy of reducing taxes, which will lead to the complete privatisation of all public services? Unfortunately, bus services from Eam will never be profitable, and private companies will be very unwilling to run anything that is not profitable. They will also be very unwilling to use profit from more profitable routes to subsidise areas like Eam. I have hydrocephalus, and the neurosurgeon wants to fit a shunt. This would mean I could not drive for 6 months. I have looked at public transport, and it is impossible for me to get to work early enough. To have a chance of getting there, albeit late, I would have to walk, cycle to Grindleford to catch the train. Not sure if that will be manageable after surgery next to my brain. Has Sarah Dines done anything in her 5 years in office to alleviate the horrendous public transport services we now have in Eam, and no post office? So obviously people with no car can't get to.
And Jill, as you've asked a specific question there, in general terms, are you asking Sarah Dines to tell you what she's done?
Yeah.
Or for the others to tell you what she hasn't done.
That's absolutely fine. I mean, we know what it's like in the village.
Yeah.
And obviously with losing
Well, I
the
think it's
post
only fair as
office.
the direct reference
Yeah.
to Sarah that she does get
Yeah.
the chance to
Okay.
answer that question. The question actually is, the question is, what have you done? But the premise of the question, of course, if I summarise it hopefully accurately, is that the policies of the Conservative government have led to increased privatisation. Privatisation has not led to profitable businesses, which has meant reduced bus services to the community, to the detriment of those who are and could be entirely dependent on it. What are you going to do about it?
Thank you for that really important question. And I'm sorry about your health issues. In relation to transport, that's a real priority for me. I was incredibly pleased to hear that the government was spending so many millions on subsidising the routes with the £2 ticket fare, which has made a massive difference in terms of how many customers have used that service. And I'm pleased to say that the government have been continuing with that financial commitment. With the change in the funding for HS2, the sum of 172 million is being put within the region to increase the assistance of bus services. And what's quite interesting, just to be for a short moment party political, the Labour Party have said they're going to reinstate HS2, so they will be taking away almost £200 million from our travel. This is a very tricky issue, and it affects people that have been writing to me all the time. It's not about privatisation or state monopoly. It's about effective service. What works for this community? I have been down to the failing bus services. I've been to Hulleys in Baslow. I've spoken to the operators. I've been to the county council on behalf of constituents who have written to me with very, very moving stories to see how we can make sure we get somebody to school, somebody to their medical appointment. So I have done, with respect, as much as anyone can do. But this is close to my heart. We do need to have effective bus services. We need good public transport. And if HS2 is reinstated, as Keir Starmer says, it's going to be very tricky. Are we going to have to cut everything in Derbyshire just so that Sir Keir Starmer has that railway? I'd like to hear from the Labour candidate on that one.
Wonderful. Well, I've got to say the HS2 is news to me. If it happens, then absolutely brilliant. Because we need HS2 to go to Manchester, but yeah, you could be wrong. I've not heard that. It's not in the manifesto. Listen, the £2 tickets are fantastic, but if there's no bus to get on, yeah. And this is one of those rare things that I can't blame on the last 14 years. This is a problem for Margaret Thatcher, I'm afraid, when she deregulated the bus services in the 80s. And what's really exacerbated public transport, of course, and I accept that, is COVID. And COVID made people very nervous about using public transport, understandably. And loads of bus routes have been axed since then. The good news, I hope, is that now we're getting lots of metro mares. And hopefully you've seen what Andy Burnham's done in Manchester. He's franchised bus routes, and that's worked extremely well. What Labour have said, what they've definitely said in the manifesto, is that we are going to offer that option of franchising to places that haven't got a metro mayor. Of course, we have got one anyway now with Claire Ward, but so we can do franchising, and even better than that, Labour are looking to legislate to allow transport to be taken back in-house by local authorities, which I think is absolutely fantastic and a step forward. So however it happens, hopefully, public services, public bodies can lay on bus routes again where it's absolutely vital for people to get to work, people to get to hospital, medical appointments, whatever it is. And in rural destinations, of course, it's even more critical to have good transport links because, obviously, you're further afield from some of the things you require. So that's, I think, a positive. Also, Labour's going to spend, they're going to try and fill 1 million potholes a year, which might just about do Derbyshire's. But yeah, that's my answer. Thank you.
probably do half of the deal, actually. Can I turn to Robert, please? I'd like to hear what the Lib Dem have to say about this.
Well, it is obviously a massive problem, and it isn't just the schedule, it's whether the bus will actually turn up, isn't it? You know, you can find yourself totally stranded in Sheffield because the last bus back doesn't run. And one of the reasons behind that is, of course, that these local bus companies are running antiquated, diesel, double-deckers with about 6 people on through the lanes of Derbyshire, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm interested to hear what John said about the mayor. Of course, the jury must still be out on whether the East Midlands mayor covering Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire will work, and whether they will have sufficiently long sight to notice rural areas like this, or whether they really concentrate on the cities. Let's see. But I have actually achieved one result, despite not being the MP. I persuaded, I think it was Hulleys, yes, to run an evening bus, believe it or not, because there wasn't one, between Bakewell and Matlock. Would you believe it, between those two centres, no bus after 6 p.m. And of course, then it is very, very much going to be reliant on people actually using it, which is, of course, an issue. Yes, the bus companies need some support. Let me give you a potential model to imagine it would be good to get to. Smaller buses.
Are you sending us into the realms of virtual reality?
No.
The Liberal Democrat policy is going to be.
We would support local bus companies, but what should they be doing? Smaller electric buses.
Rachel.
So thank you for raising that point. And the thing that dismays me is that Sarah Dines talks in the millions about funding that's been put towards transport, whereas billions are being sent to fund wars in Ukraine and other places. So we can find the money when it comes to war and overseas stuff, but we can't find it for our own people. Now, I want to just move the focus to the bigger picture here. There was recently a G7 summit which Rishi Sunak attended, where there was a discussion with the head of BlackRock, one of the biggest asset management companies on the planet, where they were discussing about moving all public investment and putting it in under the control and being financed by these big corporations. And what that means is that we, the people, will be paying for everything, every piece of construction, every bridge, everything that is financed by these big corporations. And John was right in that the problem actually was rooted in the 1980s with the privatization of all the national industries. We are now, the cost of living crisis is out of control, and yet all of those big corporations which were privatized are making massive profits for their shareholders, and something needs to change.
No, Edward, that's all right. It's my accent. It's Edward.
I think we can all agree that the bus service is pretty atrocious in Derbyshire Dales. Sarah mentioned all the money that the government has spent on this. I almost don't see it. It's been left completely to the market, and it is just not working. I see. So where is the money going to come from? Are we happy to pay more taxes so we subsidise more bus services? I think we would be happy to do that. But what I see with government is waste piled upon waste. Everywhere you look, it seems to be waste. Sarah mentioned the HS2. I think if that was scrapped, there would be plenty of money to go around to subsidise a healthy bus service between our villages, up and down our country. Tens of billions of pounds have been spent on that vanity project. I could go on. There are so many quangos that aren't even answerable to government, that spend our money on goodness knows what sort of schemes. There are massive savings that can be made that could be invested in our communities and our local transport systems. And that's very much what I would be looking at.
Pay Paul. So take it from some areas and put it into local bus services.
Yeah, it's not a nil-sum game. I think at the moment there is just so much waste that is out there that is not necessary, that can be invested in our local transport system.
Okay, thank you. Helen, I'm sorry for the error before. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I like the idea of small electric buses. And one of the things that I've done in the past is a considerable amount of community capacity building. So in the 90s and 2000s, I worked in South Yorkshire on community development projects, heavily paid for by Europe, of course, but that was in the ex-mining communities. And one of the things that we did is that we set up locally run bus services as part of our community capacity building projects, and I managed some of those projects. So I think my view is that we need to start bottom up. And I think there's nothing wrong with profits, but you know, what's wrong with just having a salary, not making excessive profits? And I think in terms of community schemes, the community wants to give back to the community. The community is vested in that its own community. It provides jobs, it provides work, and if we can get a loan, so we did community loans to particular groups to do all sorts of things, and I could see something like that working locally. But my view is top down is not working. Bottom up needs to be our approach going forward, and such a scheme I think could work here.
Yes, Matthew.
Thanks. I'm in the bizarre situation of agreeing with quite a lot of the other candidates. I think that the £2 bus ticket has been a fantastic thing to try and get more people using public transport again. And I think that the scrapping of HS2 is a good thing. Again, Green Party policy. I think we need to remember, you know, the stuff about deregulation is absolutely right. We need to remember as part of that what austerity has done to local governments who provide most of the buses in a deregulated way, and how much money has been lost in local government since 2010. You know, budgets have been absolutely decimated. One of the things so talking about Green Party policy, talking about Kelda, you know, Kelda works in public transport. Kelda's one of the people who's set up groups, set up a group working with our other local government colleagues across the district and across the county to try and address these issues, because, you know, she recognises that there are things that need to be done, and is actually doing something about it through her role as a councillor. You know, local public transport is critically important to making our villages function properly, and it's needed across the Dales.
Do you have any supplementary, having got those answers? Sorry, the mic's coming to you. There.
Yeah. It's really, really difficult in this area because they're never, ever going to run at a profit, your public services. And, you know, reducing taxes. I'm happy to pay my taxes. I want a better NHS. I want better public transport. And I wouldn't mind. My dad was a company director. Well, he was shoe research firm director. And I was brought up that it was right and proper to contribute and pay our tax for the benefit of the common.
How do you feel about the answers you've got? Very briefly. Are you comforted by them? Are you?
No, not really. I like John, my memory. I've got hydrocephalus, so I can't remember a lot of the answers.
All right. That's okay.
But I felt really positive about what John said, so...
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, thank you.
From asking questions, but there are a lot to get through in a very limited space of time. But if you put your hand up, you never know. The NHS are doing me proud at the moment. I might even see you and ask you to do the question, so please do so. I have a question which I'm going to attempt to read because it comes from a resident of Eam who cannot be here at the moment. It's also a district councillor. It's Simon Ripton. And it seems to me it's a question that's, well, it's got, his district councillor, it's got a long preamble and a very short question at the end of it. But I'll do my best, and it seems to me very apposite to this particular village. He says that tourism brings many benefits in the Peak District, but a relatively small population of residents is essentially feeling the impact of millions of visitors arriving and using an infrastructure that was not designed to cope with such a large number of visitors. A lack of a car parking strategy, an integrated working public transport system also create the difficulties. Tax could be used to leverage investment in commercial accommodation to alleviate the pressure on dwellings being turned into holiday lets. Andy Burnham and Steve Rotherham, Manchester and Liverpool mayors, both advocate a tourist tax in their mayoralties. I think I got it right. Will the candidates commit to doing the same for residents of the Peak District if elected? It's a nice preamble, but the simple question is, how about a tourist tax to help out the village? This village has a tremendous problem, which others may go on to: parking, resident parking, tourist parking, and accommodation, holiday lets, and our young people not being able to buy houses in their own village and stay close to their families, which is essential. I'll start at the end this time, if I may.
So, looking at that from a business point of view, the value of the millions of tourists coming into Derbyshire Dales is huge. And so that is a huge boost for the economy. Now, I had a conversation with Martin Guyver, who is part of the Peaks and Dales line. They're looking to reintroduce the railway. He had some incredibly innovative ideas, and there was a public meeting in Bakewell about the reinstatement of the railways. I do believe that we need to have radical and visionary plans for what we do to resolve the problem so that we can embrace the tourists as well as looking after the local people. But fundamentally, I stand for the people's rights and freedom of movement, and it is the people's rights to travel freely, to come into Derbyshire Dales and enjoy it, and I would not want personally to restrict that. Why do we need to tax tourists when actually they're bringing in so much money into the local economy? Let's embrace and encourage them and have a visionary strategy to support that influx so everyone wins. I'm all about everyone benefiting.
Okay, thank you. Matthew, what's the Green position on this? To the question, which of course was, do you believe in tourist tax?
That's a good question, and I can't remember the answer to it in terms of our policy. I'm as one of the. Well, No, I'm quite happy to commit myself, but I'm going to be committing myself rather than saying what Kilda would say as a representative of the Green Party, because I sit on the district council and I sit on the Peak District National Park Authority. So I'm a member of the National Park Authority, and as far as I'm concerned, the national parks were set up for people to access the countryside. That's what they're for, and so if they don't work, it's because we haven't got put structures in place for them to work. I agree with Rachel. It's not about either or. We should be making these things work for everybody, and we should be making sure that there's accommodation for residents, there's accommodation for visitors, and we should be encouraging people to stay in the national park for as long as they can, because that generates more income for communities. Most of the people who come to the national park now are not tourists, they're visitors, and they come and stay for the day, and that's what the real issue is. So I'd really like to see the national park having a tourism strategy to make sure that we're doing it in a properly planned way, and that is what the Green Party policy is. That we should be encouraging people to holiday at home, to reduce the international travel. If we want to do that, we need more people to stay here.
Yeah, really good question. I have to say that on bank holidays we tend to stay at home just because it's so difficult to get anywhere, and actually so dangerous. The run between Roseley and Chatsworth is just horrendous. You probably know. So we're not the only part of the country that's actually grappling with this. Places like Cornwall have got the same issues, and there are things that are being tried. So my honest answer to the question is, we need to look at what works, and at the moment I don't think we've hit on a total strategy that demonstrates that it does work. A tourist tax, I think, would be something worth looking at, but I'd want to know what it was going to be used for, how it was going to be collected, whether the collecting of it was going to cost more than it actually generated for a start. So I think it would need some scrutiny, granular scrutiny, but as I say, there are other parts of the country that we could link up with as Derbyshire Dales to say, how are we going to make this work, folks, because we're all struggling with the same sorts of issues.
Not just throwing money at it.
Absolutely not.
Yes,
no.
very well. Thank you very much. Robert. Robert, please.
I would agree with Helen on the tourist tax question. I was just thinking, having recently been in France, you pay a tourist tax there, but the whole French structure is very different. And there would be the risk that it actually cost more to collect than you would actually get in. So a cost-benefit analysis would be needed. Any new form of taxation needs to be entered into cautiously. The broader question, obviously, is about the sustainability of rural communities like this one. And there are many issues which we really do need to be dealt with in a strategic way, I think. We've seen a piecemeal approach. There are piecemeal things you can do. The maximum level of council tax on holiday and second homes has been increased. My party would increase it still further. Bad news if you own a holiday let, but I think the balance needs to be shifted back towards sustainability, because we need to have local services not closing down because they're not used, and we need to have local schools populated by local children rather than struggling with small numbers. So there's an enormous amount to do, and it does need a strategic approach. So that would be my answer, and also actually the Lib Dem answer.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. It is an absolutely fantastic question, and I don't like making decisions that quickly, but I would be inclined to say I probably would be against a tourist tax. Obviously, tourism is incredibly important. I would be more inclined to try and fix the issue with having a lot of tourists and a lot of second homes and a lot of holiday lets, and that is that certainly young people or any people, they can't buy homes in the area because I think there's 2,500 holiday lets and second homes, and the number of new houses built in the constituency in the last sort of 10 to 12 years is only just higher than that number. So we're not going forward. And, you know, we've also got lowest median gross wage in the region and the highest property prices. So young people are sort of priced out the market. There aren't enough houses being built. They're tending to go elsewhere. And as someone just said, you know, Robert just said, the schools will suffer because there won't be any young families to send their kids there. And schools are pretty much the heart of the community. So I think the issue is housing go alongside the tourism, but I think you've got to fix the two. But yeah, I think we need the tourism as well. It's a big, important part of the constituency.
Imposing a tourist tax.
I think so, yes.
Sarah.
A very interesting question from the Labour councillor, Simon. What I would say is no. There should be no tourism tax. I'm afraid I'm pretty old-fashioned and perhaps pretty rare, having been a barrister before I was an MP and answering the question. There shouldn't be a tourism tax. When I came to Derbyshire for the first time, it was as a child and as a tourist. And we came several times, like Keir Starmer's video today where he walked through the Lake District or wherever it was. The reason the Peak District exists by statute is for the working man. It's not for people that live in one particular village. Of course, we have to make improvements to make it work, but it is for the common working man, and I class myself as that. When I came to Derbyshire Dales, it was because it was free. There were 5 children in my family. We couldn't go anywhere else other than in the back of the car with a tent or a caravan. So no, tourism tax, absolutely not. If we look at the wider problem, though, of course we need to make things work better. When I was doing work on holiday lets, tax allowances, the county council said there were 2,000 or so holiday lets in the whole of the county. In the Dales, it's fewer than that, but it's still quite a lot. John wanted to know about that. So no tourism tax. This tourism in holiday lets and accommodation brings a lot of money in. It may inconvenience those that live there, but we have to rub along together because it's the right of a citizen of this country to come to a national park. It's also the right of somebody that runs a farm that might not be making any money to have one holiday let accommodation that isn't suitable in the Peak Park to get planning permission to change into a long-term home. So absolutely not. I don't need to think about it, cogitate it. It's an absolute no in an unusual answer, clear answer to the question. But if you want to know what I've done in relation to tourism generally, I'll tell you about it later.
Now, we could go on, and there are further questions in this area. Forgive me for those who I haven't asked the question, but time is going. I would like... Sorry? Oh, I'm sorry. I knew there was one I would miss. Nothing personal.
Some great points people have covered there. The Reform's point of view is definitely we don't want any extra taxes. We've got an incredibly bureaucratic tax code already. I think it runs to 22,000 pages. Hong Kong, for instance, has a tax code that runs to 500 pages, so no new taxes, definitely not. But the problem people have talked about is young families and the cost of housing in the Dales. I would like to see much more sympathetic planning for people that have lived here all their lives and are looking to expand families. I've talked to several people that cannot afford to. They're having another child, so they need extra accommodation. They can't extend the house because of the strict planning rules, so they're having to sell up, often to somebody who's going to have a holiday let out of that house, and then they're going to move to the cities for cheaper accommodation, so people are moving out from the area. I'd like to see much more sympathetic planning. I'd also like to see innovative schemes. I think they have it in Cornwall, where local people get preference over affordable housing within the area. So that would be my answer.
Yeah, the trouble with that is, when you say people get preference over affordable housing, in fact, preference would be given for Eam, and I'll be correct if I'm wrong, if you live as far away as Birmingham. The catchment area is so large, it doesn't give any advantage to local people.
I'm sure it could be worked out, Les. People that have lived here for generations are having to move out. I'm sure we could work out some geographic area for this. But certainly not, you don't want to increase taxes. It might put people off coming here. I also think people in cities that if they're on low incomes might be put off coming to our beautiful region. It should be for everybody to come and enjoy our beautiful Derbyshire Dales.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Yeah, hi there. Yeah, of course. There's a... Oh, I'm sure you can.
We have a holiday let on our house by virtue of the fact that we built an extension to accommodate our 4 children. When they moved away, we had an empty accommodation unit on the side of our house. We offered it to Derbyshire Dale District Council for renting to a young couple in the village. And they said, no, that's not the great need in Eam. The need in Eam is for holiday lets.
Whoa. Yeah. That's both. That's a startling comment there. Wow. Oh, I don't doubt it for 1 minute. But I'm from the sharp intake of breath around here, I think there's a few people were surprised and shocked.
The supplementary to that would be, where's all the money gone from the sale of council houses? Why wasn't that used to build more council houses?
That's another question which... Now, I said we're moving on. I have a couple of questions. In an area I thought I'd get a lot of questions, but there's not many. Well, there's only 2. And they both run together. So I'm going to ask, because they merge one into the other, I'm going to ask both, one after another, before we go to the answers. First, is Colin here? Colin Swindle? Yeah. Oh, there you are. I should know you. You're my clerk. Yeah. Have you got your question?
I have,
yeah.
Thank you. As somebody whose mortgage has been impacted by rising interest rates, and like everybody else, we've had the added increase in food, fuel and energy prices. I've had to take on extra work to make ends meet. I can work up to 60 to 65 hours a week. My wife works as well. We have a very modest lifestyle. My car's on its last legs. We have a small home and very few nights out for fun. And we still just get by. And the worst part is it takes time away from my young son. There are many people in my position and some a lot worse. Can the candidates please tell me what their party will do to make life easier for people like me? Thank you.
Thank you. And somebody who... And Ben Carter. He's not here. Well, I'll try again. This is on the same theme from Ben Carter. Our mortgage payments are going to go up by over £450 per month in the next 2 weeks, thanks to the disastrous incompetence of the unchecked OPM tax. Trusts and that is over £5,000 per year. My wife and I will be struggling to support our 2 children while making those payments, and we'll be cutting down our budgets for clothing and food. What will your party do in government to support people like us squeezed in this way? And what measures would you put in place to limit the economic damage brought about by such reckless leaders? It's a good start. Let's start with you, John.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm very sorry to hear that. We have lived through a moment in history, really. You say mortgage payments, I think the average is 240 a month up. Taxes at a 70-year high. National debt has doubled since 2010. Typical households are £5,900 worse off than they were 4 years ago. I mean, it is desperate. So I suppose first thing is we need a stable government, first of all, and a stable economy. We haven't had a stable government for a long time. We need to grow the economy. I know that's easier said than done, but I suppose if we have stability, we may well get there. We could do with getting some of those 7.5 million people off the NHS waiting lists, get them well again, so that they can go back to work if they are working age and contribute to the economy, pay tax, That will certainly help. We're going to introduce Great British Energy, which is going to cut people's energy bills, and that's been a massive problem, obviously, for several years. Energy insecurity. We are desperate to get, to be completely reliant on our own green security, energy. It'd be absolutely fantastic. We're going to double onshore wind. We're going to triple solar. We're going to quadruple offshore wind. We're going to do nuclear, and we're going to save, I think, the nation £93 billion. I think the equivalent is around £300 a year each for their bills. So there's a lot to do, a lot of different strands to this. But I think in the first instance, stability and economic growth will go a long way. But it's been a desperate time, and not being reckless with the economy. And not being ideological with tax cuts. I mean, I tell you what, this is my third election in 3 years, so I've spoken to a lot of people in the last 3 years on the doorstep, and not a single one of them has said to me, you know what, you need to cut taxes. No one's ever said that. And I appreciate, we all want to pay, yeah. I appreciate we all want to pay less tax, that's just human nature. But the reality is, I think we all appreciate that we need public services to work, we need the economy to be fixed, and that question about where's all the money gone is a great one. I don't know, it's a rhetorical question. I'll leave you with that one.
Where's the money coming from then? Because the Labour Party, as far as I am aware, are giving commitments not to raise any taxes.
Yeah. No increase in
national
insurance or normal taxation or VAT. The Great British Energy will come from the windfall tax, an increase of 3% on that one. Mm-hmm. What else do you want to know? And we're doing the VAT on private schools, and we're going to do the non-dom tax properly. So we raise, I think, another £1 billion that way. But also, this is a good one. Thank you for asking the question. The bizarre thing is that I didn't realise until recently is the amount we're owed in tax, the country's owed in tax, and what we actually bring in is 36 billion, and that increased by 5 billion last year. So one of Labour's policies is to actually invest some money, I think 900 million, in more tax inspectors, more kit for the tax inspectors to bring in around 6 billion. So that will pay for a lot of our programmes as well. Yeah. So
I like your confidence on your cost-benefit analysis, but still, tax inspectors will get in more tax than it will cost to pay the tax inspector. There's a lot to go at, that's what I'm saying. Exactly. Sarah.
Thank you, Colin, for that excellent question. And thank you for the work you do as parish clerk to several of the parish councils. It's a wonderful job.
He's used to us saying that. You don't have to butter him up,
okay.
Sarah.
I doubt if it would work anyway. So what are we going to do to make life easier for you? Well, just think about what the Conservative government has done, which was supported on every financial measure by the Labour Party. During COVID, the Labour Party, Sir Keir Starmer, supported each and every one of the major initiatives that the Prime Minister brought in as Chancellor of the Exchequer, and that amounted to several hundreds of pounds each time, which has accumulation over £2,000. And don't forget the fuel payments which were made, which helped a lot of our vulnerable people make do. And don't forget the extra money that was given, the 14 million jobs that were saved by furlough, people being paid 80% of their salary. It saved businesses locally here. I've had people write to me, I've met them in tears because their business was saved because of those monies. So unfortunately, the Labour Party aren't used to this because they've never been able to do it during any of their elected periods of office. You have to pay it back. I know it's a very strange thing, but you do have to pay debts back. We have had COVID, we have had Ukraine, we've had the tumultuous times of being reliant on foreign countries for fuel. So what the government has done with the Labour Party's support on every major issue would continue if the Conservatives carried on. There are more people in work than ever before, and you can't pay benefits unless you've got people in work. There are tax cuts in national insurance for the working man. That's very important. However, in this constituency, changing what is Keir Starmer's preferred tax, getting rid of inheritance tax, that's going to really affect farmers. And we know what the National Farmers Union feel about that. And it would be very nice to hear more about the Labour Party's view on that, as he wasn't at that Hustings. We cannot continue to tax, because somebody has to earn. Just remember what the Labour politician, the former Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Liam Byrne, said, which is typical for the end of every Labour administration. There's no money left. So what we would do is to continue to support in the way we have done, which the Labour Party supported us, and to be kind and support the most vulnerable. That's what being a Conservative is all about. That's what I would do.
Congratulations, sir. I went to the comedy club last Thursday, and you got the biggest laugh of the night there. And that, not because of you, but because of the perception of the last 14 years. And you've attempted to answer that for us. Thank you very much indeed. Robert.
Well, follow all that wishful thinking. I really despair. I don't know where to begin. But I'll try. First of all, I'll know when to finish, Les, when you put the black cap on as a former judge. So, yes, I'm Colin. It's nice to see you again. We did talk at a count once. And I feel for you, especially with those mortgage payments. And, of course, we all know that it was Liz Truss who decided to drive the country at high speed down a cul-de-sac until she crashed headlong into reality. And that's why we have those high mortgage rates. And yes, they probably will come down, I suspect. The Bank of England will reduce them, but it's very difficult. And it's not easy, frankly, for governments to help. I think the main thing, which is doable, is to continue to extend help with energy payments. But I have heard from the Conservative candidate what a wonderful thing the Conservatives did in lowering national insurance contributions. Do you know the salary level which benefits most from that reduction? 50,000 a year. So why not do something about the level at which people have to start paying tax, which would help those who are least well off? That would have been an alternative, but that is frozen until 2028 with the agreement of both Conservative and Labour. 4 more years. And that's tough, very tough, isn't it? So, yes, wishful thinking from the Labour candidate. And he was very honest, because he basically gave us all the impression that he's no idea at all where economic growth is going to come from. And frankly, neither of them do. Now, we've heard listed some of the hits to the economy. COVID was a hit to the economy, and I want to give the Conservatives credit for how they dealt with that. I think it was incredibly difficult. Obviously, mistakes were made, but some very good things were done, and the country was helped through it. The Ukraine war and its knock-on effects, very difficult again. But now I'm going to let the elephant into the room. What about Brexit? By which I mainly mean the way the Conservatives did Brexit, with Labour agreement, because they decided to go for as hard a Brexit as they could in order to appease the likes of Edward sitting behind me and his party. Result, significant hit to the economy. Now, we could do something about that, and the Liberal Democrats would. We would build up relationship with Europe, we'd improve our trade with Europe, take us into the single market and the customs union, which neither the Conservatives nor Labour would do. We could undo some of that damage, and we could get growth. It's better to do it by a sensible means than wishful thinking.
Edward.
As a direct answer to your question, Reform's policy is the first £20,000 of your salary, there will be no tax to pay. So we're going to significantly raise the threshold that you will have to not have to pay tax. That's a pay rise for every single person in this country of £1,500. And I think that will massively help families up and down this country. It will help everybody. And we will pay for that with the cost savings that I've talked about earlier. Your energy bills are through the roof. You're paying an extra £500 a year because of this net zero, this full onslaught into net zero. Our Labour Party want to get to net zero by 2030. The Conservative Party have put it back to 2035. This is just a pipe dream. We cannot destroy our economy by a headlong onslaught into net zero. I live on a farm myself. When I moved into the farm, I had 24 solar panels and a great big windmill. We were off grid, but when the wind wasn't blowing and the sun wasn't out, we had to rely on a diesel generator. And for maybe a quarter of the year, we had to rely on this diesel generator. I don't want to see our whole country, our farmland, devoured by solar farms and wind farms, which we would have to do to try and provide enough energy for our country. That small nuclear reactors are maybe the answer, but it will save him a lot of money on his energy bills because of scrapping net zero, which I'm explaining that is a nonsense. That the trillions of pounds that it's going to cost.
No, what about his mortgage, which is his question?
Well, he'll have an extra £1,500 a year from his allowance on his £20,000, not having to pay any tax on his first £20,000, and he's going to get an extra £500 from not having to pay all the extra taxes on his energy bills. So £2,000 a year better off.
Is Colin going to be better off, or is he just going to pay
less on that and pay that? That's quite a substantial better off.
He'll stay the same.
Well, £2,000 a year, I think, is a substantial better off, actually.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to destroy it, aren't we, really?
Okay.
What about China and India and putting up a coal-fired power station every week?
You know, we can't hear you down there. Helen, you want to join in this one?
Yeah, okay. So I have 3 children, and Colin, I recognise what you're talking about, struggling. Both my daughter and my son, their mortgages are going to be going up by over £400 very soon. My daughter spoke to me today about having to potentially sell the house. So I recognise it. And yet, at this point in time, the banks are making the biggest profits they have ever made. It does not make sense to me. When people say, where is the money coming from? What I would say is, we're a rich country. We have plenty of money. What I think we've got wrong is the way that it's shared out. So I would be in favour of taxing people who have lots and lots of money. I'm in favour of what the Green Party are saying about millionaires and billionaires. If you've got more money than you can ever spend in your lifetime, why? Why would we have people who are suffering at the bottom, and the tax system does not favour people at the bottom? It should. So what is the point putting taxes down but leaving thresholds the same so that people are actually paying more tax? So the thresholds need to be looked at. Not quite sure where that level needs to be in terms of the first threshold, but we need to look at it. Why would we give more tax breaks to people who have got more money than they can ever spend, when if we give it to people who need to spend their money, that will generate an economy? So it does not make sense to me to be handing people who've already got a lot more. And when billionaires say on the television or on Twitter, I read it, well, of course, if my billions are taxed anymore, I will leave, then I would say bye-bye, actually. Because if you're not prepared to give more to help Colin, to help my family as well, then I'm sorry, we don't need people like you. And if your investments are offshore, why? Why are you not investing in this country? So the whole thing needs to be looked at. But my principle is, if you've got the broad shoulders, you should pay more. And I'm actually in favour of the Greens policy on this. Thank you.
Rachel, how's your tale of woe?
So, Colin, I'm actually shaking my head in dismay and despair at hearing these responses. And I know, I do a lot of mentoring of small businesses, and I know how many people are on the edge, literally millions and millions of people in this country. And rather than talking about fixes for this, we need to look at the underlying fundamental problem here, and that is that big corporations have taken over everything. And as I said earlier, and has been echoed, these huge corporations are making bumper profits for their shareholders. There has been the biggest transfer of wealth over the past 4 years from the poorest people to the richest people. And that isn't just in this country, that is worldwide. We need to recognize that party politics has been taken over by these big corporate influencers. The Con Party has got about 34 million of spending on its campaign. It's a huge amount of funding. Where's that coming from? That's coming from big corporations. And I'm no fan of the Con Party or Liz Truss, but one thing I will say, I observe everything through the eyes, I question everything. I've learned, especially since the whole COVID debacle, to question everything. The interesting thing is, when the leadership came up, the party chose Liz Truss and not Rishi Sunak, the billionaire Rishi Sunak, who was aligned to the World Economic Forum and those big corporate forces. When Liz Truss came in and she tried to do something to help the people, those big forces that control the markets bounced her out of office. We need to be really clear. The manipulation which is going on is a very real thing. And I'm here to pattern interrupt and wake up as many people as I can to what is truly driving this. Because this isn't going to be solved by tinkering around the edges with fiddling with tax and a little bit here and a little bit there. We need to see clearly the fundamental root problem of this, and that is the world has been taken over by big corporate interests aligned to the World Economic Forum. And when that penny drops with the people, and we the people say, we're going to take back control and power, that's when things will change.
Matthew.
Yeah, as Helen said, you know, the Green Party policy is for bringing in wealth tax because we think the people with the broadest shoulders should pay the most tax. At the moment, you get taxed more on income than you do on capital gains. So the money that you earn from wealth, you pay lower tax rates on than you do on the money that you earn. And that's just not right. You know, people should be paying exactly at least the same amount on capital from capital gains as they pay on. I think they call it
earned income, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, you know, the fossil fuel issue is a significant issue. You know, we have, since the Conservatives came in 2010, you know, we've had a massive reduction in the amount of onshore wind, for example, which is the most cost-effective way of producing renewable energy. We've had nothing in terms of insulating homes. All of these things would have had a massive impact on the amount of money that people are paying. You know, the war in Ukraine has had a significant impact on the cost of fuels. It was the fossil fuel companies who were making loads of money out of that, and we have not been supporting people through that because of things that were made, because of decisions that have been made, political decisions that have been made over the last 15 years. You know, people should have been supported. We should have been supporting people to get to net zero much quicker, to reduce the risk, we have no energy security because of where our fuel comes from. We could be producing it here and we're not. And in terms of where the money's gone, you know, obviously people have talked about Kwasi Kwarteng and his budget. We pay the highest tax burden since 1947. We've got schools and hospitals collapsing all over the place. You know, something is happening with that. And you know, my thinking about that is, you know, the two words which sprang into my head when we were talking about where's the money gone was Lady Moan. You know, that sort of activity has been going on all over the place, and you know, that's where the money's going.
Can I move now to an area which is of particular importance to people? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Quick question for everybody there. Well, most of you have said that you want to tax the rich. 10% of the rich pay 60% of the income tax in the UK. If only 1% leave, that's £15 billion that's going to disappear from your budget. That's a lot of money that you're going to have to make somewhere else.
Wow. Now, that's not a question as such, it's a statement.
May 24, by the way.
Any response to that? Yeah, Sarah.
I think what is quite clear is that you've got to stimulate growth. We all agree about that. Keir Starmer's still trying to work out how to do it, but he does agree we need to do it. And you've got to stimulate growth to get more money in. And we've seen over several hundred years that the more you tax, the more people want to leave. So unfortunately, to be able to help the community more, you do have to have some incentives to actually make money, and then we can help the vulnerable. And that's what being a responsible Conservative is about. So if you penalise too much the wealth creators, you have nothing left. And I welcome Keir Starmer saying he wants to become a wealth creator. He's coming to the Conservative side at last.
Taking up the premise, you're saying don't tax the rich.
No, I'm not saying don't tax the rich completely, but you need to be careful about it.
How far you go.
Yeah, how far you go, because you are going to lose, you know, like I say, 60% of UK tax is paid by 10% of the population.
Yeah.
So, I've worked in accounts for years, and I can tell you now, very few people actually do pay the tax they should pay. Everybody pays.
Right. John, do you want to? Yeah.
I just want to say, I mean, the Labour Party aren't proposing, you know, a massive hike on the richest. Yeah. Yeah. They're not at the moment. That's what I'd like to say. But I also just wanted to say, about the 36 billion that we don't collect. That's absolutely right. That we should collect. And also, the Liz Truss budget, I think it was a disaster, not because of corporate influence, but it was a disaster because she cut taxes and tried to borrow to backfill it. It was a complete and utter disaster, and we're all paying for it now. Just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Echoing the words of other people, we'll really look at the questions and really look in the future. Okay, anybody else? Yes. Oh, sorry, yeah. Sorry, that's all right, go ahead.
Go next. We're not proposing to soak the rich either in that kind of way. We would look to tax some of the corporate entities which are making very large profits, such as the banks and the energy companies, which is a slightly different tactic. And I think also, in fairness to everybody, you know, when you look at a manifesto, you may not be able to distinguish between short-ish term measures and longer-term measures. You know, manifestos are supposed to cover a 5-year period, and some of the things would be looked at more gradually.
Yeah, I just think the politics of envy and it's all the fault of the rich and we need to tax the rich more, I just think is the wrong approach to this. You'll scare them off and it's an international world these days. People can just go abroad, take their entrepreneurial skills and their businesses with them. Both parties here, both major parties here tonight, and particularly the Labour Party, I just find they're talking about growth within the economy. How on earth are we going to grow the economy if we keep this insidious debate up that it's all the fault of the rich and we need to tax the rich more? I think we need to lower corporation tax, incentivize business to expand and grow and produce more, and profit is not a dirty word. I think we're never going to grow the economy. Last year's GDP figure was an anemic figure of 0.5%. Most of that was because of mass immigration. GDP per capita, when you start dividing the amount of people there are in the country by the GDP figures, it's actually going down. The pie is getting smaller.
Rich, you'll have a mass emigration.
Absolutely. It happened in the 1970s. It happened in the 1970s, and under this Keir Starmer government that has got no idea about tax policy, it's going to happen again.
I think we'll leave it there. Anybody else want to come in on this? Yes. Let's keep it short.
Yeah.
All right.
So I just wanted to question this idea of the wealth creators. You talk about the wealth creators. The people are the wealth creators. In truth, it's the people who are the wealth creators. And I absolutely agree that the big corporations are making bumper profits. We were at the farmers' hustings the other night. The farmers are living on the edge because of big supermarkets and their prices being driven down. This is the real problem, that there is too much power with big corporations and everyone is suffering. I can't put this strongly enough. The true wealth creators are the people, the working people in this class.
Yeah.
Big corporate, is Tesco going to get up and leave the UK? I don't think so. And I also want to say as well, on the subject of planning, this is another big issue about affordable...
No, you might want to, but you're not going to.
Big corporations have no problems getting planning permission. If you're...
Just a very, very short, it's a statement, not a question. It's about that point that was just made on profits and how, that doesn't have an impact on ordinary people. In 2022, oil companies and energy companies made profits of 76 billion. In 2023, that was over 700 billion. Was there no link between that and how much people's energy bills went up? There's clearly a link to me, I think, and, just think people in that room should say that when some of the candidates are completely ignoring it.
Thank you.
Can I bring the level down to more local? Because I can't understand millions and billions. It's far too much. Is it on this topic? I can take one before I move on. Yeah, I had this hand was up first.
Thanks. It's just a follow-up question. In this constituency, I think about 15% of people are living in fuel poverty. And obviously renewable energy at the moment is the cheapest form of energy. But there's a real dearth of people and support for retrofit, insulation, very little planning about green jobs in this area. And I know that the national statistics are 83% of the general public want to see greater action on climate. There's a clear win-win on some of these energy issues, retrofitting, investing in green jobs. So could the candidates just spell out their approach to green jobs, future-focused investment.
We've got a question coming up on the climate later. We can probably deal with it then, all right?
Well, maybe now.
Maybe not. Maybe not. This lady, have you got a short comment or question?
Very short question. Yeah, I was just wondering what the candidates feel about the priorities of the government as it was, and the government to be formed in the next 4 years, and whether people here think that we are chasing the wrong villains. For example, the few pounds sometimes that people who are carers and, you know, retrospectively having to repay debts when they're on very, very low incomes themselves and in very hard situations where they're caring. And yet we allow the water companies to take the bosses there to take these huge bonuses. And I think that, you know, we're chasing the wrong villains. I was wondering if anyone agreed.
Lynn Innes. Is she with us? Yeah, well, yes, but I don't want to spend the rest of the night on this topic. I've got other questions. Okay. Yeah, sorry?
Want the 2 new topics?
Very well, I'll take short comments. It's your...
Okay, I agree. We have got the values, principles and priorities wrong. And, you know, somebody mentioned COVID and some of the contracts that were let during COVID and the outrageous corruption that happened as part of that. We need to get that money back. I think the other thing you talked about, carers and young carers as well, they provide unpaid social care to the tune of millions, if not billions. I had a meeting with a group of carers the other day, and I was shocked at how much they contribute voluntarily for their loved ones, but they're saving the state a huge amount of money. Any help we can give them, I think we need to promote. So yes, I agree, we haven't got the values right.
Thank you. The lady here raised the point about carers and the fact that carers, if they go, £1 over the maximum earning, they have to repay everything that they've already received when they're in no position at all to be able to do so. And yet, by contrast, our questioner said, we have the corporations that or on record have not behaved very well at all, and yet their chief executives are getting paid eye-watering amounts of money. Why are the government allowing that situation to exist?
I haven't even answered yet, but I will take the clap. There's 2 interesting points there. The first bit about carers is it's not right that £1 can make the difference, and that shows you that the system needs reform. So I wholeheartedly agree we need reform of the system of benefits for carers. The second point of the question was geared at the huge bonuses from the water companies, and that's one thing where I can tell you about what I have done in that. I have held the CEO of Severn Trent Water to account for the year before last when she took £4 million in salary and bonus from what is a quasi-state company, or be a private company now under statute. But there's no competition, we all know that. And I invited her to the House of Commons. She didn't come, and then eventually she did come. I took her to task, and after inadequate responses, I, as your Member of Parliament, having had numerous emails about it, made such a fuss that the government are now, through the Water Minister, I worked very hard on this issue, the government are now bringing forward plans to stop water bonuses, and that's something which I'm sure the Labour Party would agree with us on that. So that is an example of how I have listened to you, and it makes common sense, doesn't it? If you have a free market, you should be able to pay your shareholders what you want. But if it is a state or a quasi-state organisation, you shouldn't take the mickey. And that's how I held her to task, and it did work. Local democracy does work through an MP, and if you're experienced and you've done that, it helps for the future.
Anybody else want to come in on this?
Yeah, could I come in on that, please?
Sure.
I think the regulators of the water industry, I mean, they must be asleep at their desks. you look at all the sewage and whatever that's been discharged into our river systems, I think we need a lot tougher regulator to crack down on this. And if people are working hard and providing an excellent service in the water company, they do deserve the profits, but I don't see that at the moment. With a tougher regulator. No, definitely not. I think a tougher regulator to make sure these businesses are running properly. The caring question as well, these are unsung heroes in our communities. Often people working long hours for below minimum wage, etc. So that's why the reform policy of the first £20,000 of your salary, no tax to pay whatsoever, and I think that would help everybody out.
One more.
Just to say on carers, Labour are going to pay the minimum wage. It will be the living wage. So everyone on what was a low wage will be given a boost, which is great. Water companies, the boss is pocketing, 10 million, while our bills have gone up £139 extra a year, is absolutely disgraceful. I agree with the regulator. It needs powers to prevent bosses getting bonuses. Labour are going to punish the water companies if they pollute our rivers like they have been doing, and hopefully we'll get some more revenue in that way. But what we want them to do is not pollute the rivers. That's the main thing there, helpfully.
The water companies, again, a bizarre situation of agreeing with the Reform Party. The regulation is the critical issue of this, and how the Environment Agency have been gutted since 2010, and don't have the powers that they need. They don't have the funding that they need to prosecute water companies when they break the law. It's not a surprise that water companies are doing what they can get away with. Because there's no mechanism for checking whether they've done what they're supposed to have done. We've all paid where we pay water rates. The money that the money that the water companies pay, the money that the water companies receive from the public, is regulated by Ofwat, and they do an asset management program every few years. They're going through one at the moment, and how much we pay in water is determined at that point, and that tells you how much they're going to spend on the various different things that they do. They haven't done that because the Environment Agency hasn't had the funds to regulate them. That's it's a complete failure of government regulation.
Flashback to 2019, I agree with Matt. We said that a lot back then. But just to add to that on water, that it is a scandal that the water companies have borrowed money to pay dividends and bonuses to their bosses. And we would turn them into public benefit companies. We have tried hard to hold them to account in the House of Commons on the sewage leaks, but somebody in this room kept voting against us. And she wasn't alone, obviously. And on carers, I just point you to anything you've seen or heard from Ed Davey. He understands caring. He had to care for both his parents till they died. He has to care for his wife, and he has to care for his son. And we feel very strongly that carers, particularly carers at home, need a lot of support. And that is what we do.
I think we can now move on to Lynn. Is she with us? No. Let me read this one for you because it brings it to a topic very much involved with this area and particularly our young people. As affordable housing is so expensive in the Peak District, what will each party do in regards to social housing in order for local people to be able to live and work in the area? And she goes on to say, my elderly disabled mother now lives with us as she did not want to be on her own anymore or go into a nursing home. I get £80 a week as long as I don't work, and earn more than 130. If I earn over that, I lose the allowance. I and over 4 million carers are struggling. Are you going to increase our benefits and change the system? But I think a main question is with regard to affordable housing and what can be done about it. Very well. Can I start with Robert?
Thank you, Les. We've got, in Derbyshire Dales, we've got two authorities, really, if you neglect the bits that boundary changes have added to the constituency. We've got the Peak Park and we've got Derbyshire Dales District. And of course, that actually results at the moment in putting an excessive burden in terms of meeting the government's new housing targets on the district, because the Peak Park drags its feet, as it does on most things. And obviously, we need some work with them. Now, I know that the comparatively new administration on the district council, as you probably realise, we now have a progressive alliance who threw out the old conservative administration 13 months ago. And they are now talking very firmly and hard with the Peak Park about this. We need some work with the Peak Park and from the Peak Park to do sensible things within this area. And let's face it, their planning rules are incredibly retrogressive. It's incredibly difficult to get planning from the Peak Park, even for sensible things for your house, but even for, sensible barn conversions. Utterly ridiculous. So that's one thing which we would definitely do. But there's also a bigger, more national issue. I don't know whether you realize how much power is in the hands of property developers. There are not many, about 6 large property developer companies. And they have an enormous amount of power, which is actually partly given them by government targets, bizarrely enough, because they can then hold local authorities to ransom when local authorities try to get them to alter, or the authority tries to actually forbid a particular development for good reasons, not enough infrastructure, bad highways, etc. And that is really difficult. So we actually need to hold the toes of the property developing companies over a very hot fire and make sure that they are prepared to accept that they've got to do the job properly. And one of the things that happens with property developers is they will agree to put in so many affordable houses, and then, hey presto, as the development proceeds, it mysteriously is more difficult for them to do it. Well, I'm sorry, we can't accept that.
We've got 2 major bureaucratic local planning authorities in the Dales. We have the Peak Park Authority and we have Derbyshire Dales District Council. Each of those has severely let down people by lack of planning, thought, and lack of a due proper planning process. One thing I have done is hold them both to account. It is outrageous that the Derbyshire Dales District Council's local plan for many years has been thoroughly inadequate. Robert is wrong when he says that it is the government's targets that force development into those areas. It is lack of imagination. Michael Gove abolished the targets. It's discretionary now. It's lack of imagination and proper planning. And I think it's closed today. So I think at midday, or maybe it was 5 o'clock, you've missed the chance if you wanted to have your say on the local plan, because the Derbyshire Dales have just closed a 6-week consultation, only advertised on their own website, very little thought about there. Affordable housing, what would I do? Well, I would change the Peak Park Authority, the way it's governed. I'd get them to look at their policies. I have had various meetings with Phil Mulligan, not only about the visitors centre, but also about housing for young people in our communities, particularly farming communities. How many people here are farmers? If I can just ask. Are there any farmers here? I thought not, because I haven't been asked a single question about farming, which is what I wanted to talk about also today, and also to ask the Labour candidate about the Labour manifesto that only has 87 words about farming, 30% of which are about banning the cull, which I hear today Keir Starmer has overruled and he's going to support the badger cull. So I'd like to hear from the candidate about that. Housing, going back to housing, yes, the housing that we have done, the housing that we have managed to squeeze into Derbyshire Dales has been funded Guess what? By Homes for England, by our taxes through the Conservative government. So there is money there, and do you know what? I've held the District Council to account because they don't always apply for it. Drives me mad. Why would you not apply for that money? It's there for the giving. But the Derbyshire Dales District Council do not apply for the full amount of Homes for England money they can. I don't understand it. I think in the Peak District, there should be a little more development in a meaningful way for our young people within the Peak Park. It shouldn't be a museum piece. We are a living economy, including farmers and villagers and everybody. So what I would do is I would continue, if I'm elected, to hold the Peak District and really pull local authorities like the Derbyshire Dales District Council to account. Regardless of politics, I will hold them to account, and I have done, as many of you may know. If I can answer that aside, I would work with them because I had to pressurise Derbyshire Dales District Council to apply for money. The Levelling Up grant, they didn't apply for the first lot. I had to say, please, please, please apply. I will help you. They applied and they got 13.5 million for Ashbourne. I wanted to apply for Matlock, but we did get the shared prosperity funds, about £800,000 or £900,000 from the money that we saved that we didn't have to send to Europe. We've got that for our local communities. So it's all about applying for what's available and being a more efficient planning authority. The Peak District, Derbyshire Dales District Council need to be held to account. If I don't do it, if I don't work with them, and sometimes as a critical friend, who else will? Anyway, that's only if you re-elect me, and I'm sure everybody in this room will want to do that.
It's hope triumphing over expectation, perhaps. Yes, John.
Yeah, there's several problems here. Labour want to build 300,000 new houses a year, which hasn't been done, I think, since the 70s. And in the 70s, local authorities were building social housing. That's more or less disappeared off the map. The problem with local authorities is, and as Sarah mentioned, going to bid for certain pots of money. Local authorities are on their knees, like almost every other public service in this country. They've been absolutely decimated over the last 14 years with austerity. I know from Derby's perspective that the little bit of money you can build you've got to build social housing. With right to buy, quite often the property gets sold very quickly and the local authority ends up actually losing out. So it's not in their interest to sort of build a lot of properties. That needs to change. It's got to be, the local authorities have got to be incentivised to build social housing. What Labour are proposing is obviously brownfield first, but I appreciate there aren't loads of brownfield sites left. And then they're looking at greyfield, which is sort of greenfield, but car parks or not particularly picturesque parts of the green field, and then greenfield sites where they would commit to 50% affordable housing. We've got to have, even saying affordable housing, it's like you have to put in air quotes because affordable housing is still expensive, but at least it's just about within reach. So we need more properties, 100%, especially for our younger people. We need them to be cheaper. We need to stop our younger people clearing off to other areas of the country. We need them to just thrive here, get jobs here. Yeah, well, we need housing. Okay.
You're going to deal with it?
Well, we can build more housing, but it's got to be affordable and it's got to be and a proportion of social housing as well. If the local authorities actually have the money. And one thing that Labour are proposing, which is great for local authorities, I don't know whether people are too concerned about local authorities here, but they're proposing to give them multiple year budgets, which I know is absolutely amazing because every year it's a nightmare. And the second thing, removing this begging bowl culture of asking the local authorities officers, obviously there are much fewer of them these days because they're all absolutely on the knees, but they have to apply for everything, every little bit of funding. They've all got to put bids in to get anything in. And I'm delighted to say Labour are proposing getting rid of
to reform that system.
Yeah.
Edward, I would like to get some more questions in. I'm not stopping you or anybody else, but
I think we've had some aspirations, and we'd love to do this and love to do that. And how are we going to do it? I've heard from the Conservative representative here tonight. They've had 14 years in government, and Sarah's trying to tell us that she's going to do something new and it's all going to change miraculously. I almost don't see it. I think I would like to come at this another way as well. The rental sector within the Derbyshire Dales is being decimated because of Conservative tax changes that George Osborne brought in and all sorts of legislation in favour of tenants. Every landlord I know within the Derbyshire Dales is running for the hills, is selling up. And a lot of these properties that are being bought are by second homeowners that are hardly ever in the Derbyshire Dales. So again, I think we need to reform the way we deal with the landlords in this country. I think they've been put out of business. There will be no housing to rent in the future. I think we said there are two layers of bureaucracy, the Peak Park and the District Council. We've introduced yet another layer of bureaucracy with the East Midlands Mayor that will be tinkering with this and slowing down planning. I think the Mayor should be abolished, and maybe we should look at the Peak District Authority as well. Abolish that. It should be just simplified, and therefore the planning developments can get off the ground.
The question.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Matt? Yeah, Rich. You got something to propose other than what we've already heard other people are suggesting? What do you agree with?
Well, yes. So for once, actually, I agree with Sarah.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, that Peak Park Authority has turned the Peak District into a museum. It's true. And the issue of affordable housing could be completely transformed overnight if we had an innovative and visionary approach. Now, is anyone aware of the number of people, especially young people, who are sleeping in their cars and sleeping in converted transit vans? We see them a lot on the streets of Bakewell, just parking up and living like that. That's how a lot of people are living because of the cost of living crisis. Now, I've been to some amazing innovative places, for example, Lammas in Wales and Findhorn up in Scotland, where they have achieved amazing things within the community, where there is affordable housing and it's supported by enterprise and community, where you've got amazing support for the people who live there. So it isn't just about having a home, it's about creating income streams, and it's also supporting the mental health and the well-being of the community. And Wales has got the One Planet development policy. So what we truly need is a visionary and innovative approach, and not have this authoritarian dictatorship, which is unfortunately what has been created.
Okay, thank you. Matthew?
Yeah, for the Green Party, affordable housing is our priority. We do think that there are significant issues with second homes and holiday lets. I think that there's. I saw statistics recently that actually there are enough houses in the UK for people to live in, but they're not shared out very well. And I think it is worth remembering that the national park is a national asset, and we should be doing stuff to support the communities which live here. But that shouldn't be about completely unplanned development across the national park. I think one of the key issues has been the issue about right to buy, where local authorities don't feel confident that they're going to be able to maintain their affordable housing stock or their social housing stock. And and whilst that came in the 80s, unfortunately Labour didn't do anything about it the last time they were in power, when they could have done, which is really disappointing.
Okay. Yes, finally. Yes, Helen.
Okay, just a couple of other things really to add. We have in the UK 1 million unoccupied homes currently, and I looked it up, we have 1,000 in Derbyshire Dales. There's a business opportunity there. I watch Homes Under the Hammer, and actually there's lots of people who could develop those, make a bit of profit, and bring those homes back into use. In Grindleford a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to an award-winning sustainable builder. Just by chance, he was up on a roof, repairing his roof. Sorry?
We're just hoping he maintained his position up on the roof.
Yeah. Oh, he was up on the roof. He wasn't going to jump. He was actually repairing his roof. And he was saying, actually, what Robert was saying. There are he works nationally. He's got a company, builds stuff all over the place. But he was saying there are 4 or 5 big boys, big developers, who have vested interests. And again, they're holding this back in terms of innovation. This morning I was with East Midlands Chamber for a different hustings, and there were some guys there from a building firm who knew this sustainable builder. Actually, they were saying building techniques, again with those vested interests. We have the technology now to build a home for 90,000, a decent home for £90,000, but because of those vested interests, those developers don't want these new techniques. We've talked a lot, actually, about retrofitting things like insulation into buildings. I just want to tell you a story as well about a guy I met a couple of weeks ago at Derbyshire Smallholders.
I don't really think we have time for anecdotes.
Right, okay. Sustainable buildings and retrofitting insulation, for example, sheet wool would be a good idea. In Chesterfield, we have prefabs that were built after the war. Still there, still good, still solid, good homes. I visited the Peatlands in Stony Middleton. What a lovely development that is. Again, they're on a prefabricated basis.
So what's your proposal?
To do more of it, Les, to do more of it.
Thank you very much. Yes, sorry, I didn't see your hand.
Any solar panels. And I'm thinking, aren't we making retrofitting an ever-increasing job? Can't you build a new property in a carbon-neutral way, as you'd expect?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
So would you propose that there's legislation to insist that all new builds were carbon neutral and had made use of all the new technology?
Who wouldn't?
Can I just say very quickly, absolutely brilliant. The thing is, when Gordon Brown was the Prime Minister, that was the policy. It was going to come in 2016. All new builds were going to be carbon neutral.
Yeah.
But it was one of the green initiatives in the bonfire of George Osborne's...
So who wouldn't do this? Anybody going to stand up and say, no, we don't agree?
And commercial buildings as well, of course.
Yeah, well, there we are. Now, as one of those people that increasingly need... Yes.
But is it not also fair to ask if it is our policy? I mean, you said, wouldn't you do it? But is it our policy?
Meaning, yes, I can see the semantical difference between not disagreeing with something but not forming part of your policy. So, who would say this is not part of their policy?
From having read all the manifestos, I don't think it's part of anybody's policy, and people need to be honest about that.
All right, that's your answer.
Yeah. Can I mention about the Peak District? It may be the Green policy.
No, I want to move on to one other area.
At least I had the guts to answer that question.
It is our policy.
Well, there we are.
It's not in the Reform Manifesto, Contract with the People, but I would be massively sympathetic towards it, and I think it's a no-brainer on commercial buildings as well.
Anybody else want to join in this Me Too?
I don't think it's a planning issue. It is our policy, but I think it's stuff which should be done at national level through building regulation. You know, it shouldn't be a matter of opinion. Yeah. It's a local opinion. It's a matter of.
Hello, you're coming back.
I
National
just want to say, I don't think it is in the Labour manifesto, but if I get elected, it's definitely something I want to do.
You don't think it is?
Oh, well, okay, it isn't, but it's something I'd want to put in there. I'll work for it.
Well, there we are. You know, that's as good as one of the slogans that one of the candidates put out that I saw, which I hesitated to mention, but the slogan went, politics, politicians, aren't you sick of them? Well, I certainly am. And that was one of the candidates tonight that said that. So I thought it was very honest and transparent. One a quick one.
I just want to say that my policy is to be a voice for the people, and I will speak out for the needs and desires of the people.
Good, thank you very much indeed. Mark Everett, please, because we're moving into an area now where people like, well, me, are having increasing calls upon the National Health Service. So it's very important to me, and I'm sure to others as well. It is a very pertinent question. Yes, Mark.
Thanks. I worked in the health service for many decades. I have seen it go through various transformations. It started just after the Second World War under Labour against great opposition, was grossly underfunded for quite a number of decades, and we were way below the European and American average of spend. But it performed amazingly well because people were totally committed and went way above their job descriptions. We then hit the Maggie Thatcher era, the Birmingham Children's Hospital fiasco happened where lots of operations were cancelled due to lack of funding. And so we had a reorganisation so that it was taken away from government responsibility and put on chief executives. No more money, but let's shift the blame away from the politicians. Through the mid-90s and into the first part of this century, there was a huge amount of investment. We went from way below international averages to just below international averages. We had the greatest satisfaction ever of the National Health Service. We had the shortest waiting lists, and targets were being met. And then since then, we've seen it collapse and to the point where it's on its knees. Austerity was an ideological approach that has been used as a smokescreen for the destruction of the health service, environment agency, education, justice, just about any public service you want. So my question is, are you going to try and pursue this destruction of such valuable parts of our community, or is your party going to change things and reinvest and get it back to where it should be?
Thank you very much. And Francis Beveridge, your question is within the same area. Are you with us? Ah, there you are. Bring the microphone.
Mine's mainly about Sure Start. I just need to put the glasses on. Right. Since 2010, Derbyshire Dales is seeing a trend of worsening health, including mental health amongst parents and children. This includes a worrying trend of an increased death rate in newborn babies and children, which reverses the steady improvements we have seen in previous decades. In 2016, Derbyshire County, 34 Sure Starts were closed, including in Bakewell and Wirksworth. They are now closing, this is Derbyshire County, a further 10, which includes the one in Matlock, and there are now no Sure Start children's centres in Derbyshire Dales. How are you and your party going to tackle this public health issue that the Sure Start programme did so much to address?
Thank you very much. So both questions outline the problems in all those differing areas of importance in the National Health Service. And the question is, what are you going to do to alleviate or eliminate these problems? And I'll take it in chair order. Sarah.
Thank you for those really thoughtful, important questions. As a mum of 4 grown-up boys and as a former barrister that worked in the area of family and care, this is a really, really important issue. I was very pleased to be working with Andrea Ledson when she was a minister in the previous government in setting up a new initiative which does a lot of broadly similar things, family hubs. And I was petitioning for one in Derbyshire Dales because we don't have anything of a resource like that. And it's absolutely fundamental. Last Monday, a week ago, I met with a group of young families in Wirksworth to work on this very similar issue, because health, mental health, education, basic parenting, everything is all very much connected, and you need to look at it in a holistic way. If I can move on to the NHS for a minute, the NHS has been on a massive journey, and I'm so proud it was the Conservative government that brought that in. What we need to do, however, is, well, if you look, it's part of the journey, but the Conservatives were part of the beginning of the story. It wasn't just, listen, it is just not a bastion of one political party over the other. Looking at the NHS and spending, because it was suggested there was an ideology of austerity, there was frankly a lack of cash. It wasn't an ideology, it was a lack of cash. And only with growth can you spend more. But I am proud that this government has spent more per person on the NHS than ever before.
Questions were very specific. They set out the problem and that there are problems based on their knowledge and experience, and said, what are you going to do about it? What's the answer?
I would, if I'm given a chance, I would like to see, as Wes Streeting says, a total look again at the way the NHS is organised. I think it's too big. I think it's too unwieldy. It's too unwieldy. And Wes Streeting is onto something. And it'd be interesting to see if John agrees. We need to look at how that money is spent. When we look at the previous experiments that failed, it was a private finance initiative of the Tony Blair years. We're still paying those debts back. And I'd like to see a total reorganisation of it. But as a party, you say, what are we doing? What am I going to do in the future if I get re-elected? I would want to continue to see spending more per person than ever before. The Conservatives have done that. I'd like to see it continue.
Yes, thank you. I think when we have failing public services, including health, we end up in the position that we're currently in. And I think there needs to be a very firm, clear statement about, from whatever government is in power, certainly from myself this would come, a commitment to the NHS, to making it efficient, effective, and a valued public service. And at the moment, it's none of those. So the NHS and the 7 million people currently waiting, there's a massive link between health and wealth. And we need to understand that the health element has to be invested in. The other thing that was mentioned was Sure Start, and as a previous Assistant Director of Children's Services, I'm absolutely committed to early help and preventative services. We've lost them. We've totally lost them. And as a result, we have high mental health, we have high levels of domestic violence, high levels of child poverty that are a disgrace for a country that has as much money as we have. So, upstream early help preventative services have to be invested in. It's counterintuitive, but if you put money up front for preventative services, then it pays dividends later on. So thank you very much. And the other thing I would say is community hospitals. I've been in trouble for calling them cottage hospitals, but community hospitals. Whitworth Hospital is blooming brilliant. You go in there with a minor injury, you're in and out in 40 minutes with your prescription. You go up to Chesterfield Royal, you're there 4.5 hours, and then you have to start it all again because they've changed shifts. So, more community hospitals.
Very much agree with Helen, but just remember that in terms of mental health, there are things that we have been not doing because of cuts and so on, which we should be doing. Youth clubs, voluntary activities, voluntary things that children and young people can do, sport, all these things have got more difficult and are becoming less popular. And there is a connection between that and the mental health issues which young people are experiencing. And if I may just take a look at the problems with hospitals, there are problems at both ends. One is GPs. So we need to invest in a properly funded GP model so that we, A, recruit more, but B, retain more, so they don't go off to Australia. And at the other end, if you can't leave hospital because you can't get into social care, obviously the hospital becomes blocked. The GP thing is relevant to hospitals because if people can't see a GP, they go to A&E. So there are preventative things that we can do. But I just want to say one more thing, Les, and it will be quick. Hasn't this evening been rather gloomy? But you know, this people, the people of Britain, are amongst the most innovative in the world. And there are people working their socks off to come up with new medical techniques, and we need to encourage them. AI, you might be frightened of AI. You might be frightened that it's going to take over the world and wipe the human race out. But the applications of AI in medicine are incredibly exciting. And there are some cutting-edge things happening in this country. I just wanted to raise our spirits, albeit for 5 seconds.
Edward.
Yeah, NHS waiting lists, they're just a disgrace. One of Rishi's 5 pledges in January 2023 was to cut NHS waiting lists. At that time, it was 7.2 million people were waiting for operations. Now it's actually gone up. It's 7.6 million people. I find that a disgrace. I think we've got to get these waiting lists down. I think we've got to involve private medical practice to reduce these queues. The NHS, I think we've got to be innovative. Some of the radiology departments have got to be open 24 hours a day over weekends. Some of these expensive machinery that's just sitting idle, I think that could be better used. I think
you want all the facilities to be open 24/7?
Private needs to come in and take the place to get these queues down, because I think it's an absolute disgrace that 7.6 million people. In a way, we are privatising the NHS. People that have got money won't wait for years on these waiting lists. They'll just go and have the operation done privately. I think that that is a disgrace. I firmly believe in our NHS. Staff retention is just dire. Lots of people get qualified and then they leave the profession. Reform's policy is to give lots of tax breaks to people that stay in the profession, write off student debts that stay in the NHS and work there. We want to give tax relief to anybody who does take out private medical insurance, again to try and alleviate the amount of people that the demand for the NHS services. So yeah, I think there's a lot of things that can be done there.
Yeah, Sure Start. You mentioned Sure Start Children's Centres. They were, well, I think, probably the finest innovation of the last Labour government. Labour government, definitely Labour government. They were incredibly important for a whole host of reasons, but one of them obviously relates to both these topics, and that is the IFS did a study of Sure Start and found that it was so effective in preventing children's hospitalisations that the money it saved the NHS was equivalent to 1/3 of the entire Sure Start budget. So it wasn't just doing the sort of the social care things, the preventative, the keeping families together, the training for new parents, all those sort of things, excellent things where it's a very difficult moment in people's lives, but it was also making huge strides in health as well. So, and we have some of those family hubs in Derby now. We've got 6. They've been very effective. Going back to what I said earlier, it's another thing where you have to get the begging bowl out. We tried to get family hubs. They're sort of meant to go from 0 to 19, I think it is, or 20 even. But we only got funding for 0 to 3 or 4, which is basically Sure Start, as it was. But that's good, and they're working really well again. in Derby. I mean, obviously, unfortunately, the county didn't manage to get through the lottery of getting that done. But yes, it is absolutely fundamental, and we have to get back there. Now, obviously, there is some little bit of funding out there. I know the government, the previous government, was saying that money was going to run out next year. It was all short-term stuff. Crazy shit. We need long-term, and we need sure start, or whatever they're going to call it from now on, to come back to help families, keep families together, stop the number of kids in care. These keep going up and up, and the local authorities can't afford it. They're all going to go bankrupt unless something changes in local government. As for the NHS, we're going to do 40,000 hospital appointments a week. That's going to be tough, but we have to do that to get the waiting list down. They're currently 7.5 million-ish, and it's just overwhelming the NHS. We're also going to take on 8,500 new mental health staff, which is fantastic. We're going to double CT and MRI scanners. And, 700,000 NHS dental appointments, 100,000 urgent children's dental appointments. And that's something. I'll leave it there. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, Matthew.
Absolutely, we think the Green Party policy is that the NHS should be free at point of use. We don't believe that it's quite obvious that bringing in a for-profit provision within the NHS is going to remove money from the system. How can that possibly make the system better? I think the issue that we've got, the issue that we've got in terms of the NHS is that we've had 14 years of non-investment in it. We have ageing population, we have more and more problems. We had the whole period of time of COVID. We need to invest in this sort of we need to invest in the NHS. But we're also not investing because of the problems that we've got in local authorities. We're not investing in care either. And so, as somebody else said, there's massive blocks from getting people out of hospitals into care because we're not supporting local authorities with care. As I think it was John saying that local authorities across the country are on the verge of going bankrupt because they're not being supported properly to fund care for young people and old people. I think it's definitely worth saying that when I was listening to Sarah, I was just thinking about. I saw some statistics recently about how the NHS has changed in the last 14 years, and it's truly catastrophic. And looking at one of the things which has gone up, which goes on to the how we think about young people and what we think about how we want to support young people, is the increase in food banks that have happened over the same period of time. We are behaving immorally. And it is. Unfortunately, it is Sarah and the party that she represents and has, who've been in government since 2010.
As there are problems which have to be addressed.
There are absolutely problems which have to be addressed, and as we said earlier on, the people, we believe in a wealth tax because we think that the people who have the broadest shoulder in society should be paying for this.
Okay, Rachel.
Yeah, so I watched the leaders' debate between Sunak and Starmer where they were like, waiting lists, have they gone up, have they gone down, is it 7.7 million, is it 7 million, or is no 7.5, what is, and I'm sitting there saying, why have we got so many sick people? 7 million people, that's 10% of the population, thereabouts, and the way I see the NHS is that over recent years it's been taken over by management consultants and big pharma protocols. And the big pharmaceutical companies have no interest in making people healthy and well. They're about making big profits. Now, I was at an event in London. I move in the world of alternative therapists and holistic therapies, and these people are outlawed. And a lot of people that I know who've been, for example, diagnosed with cancer are actually turning to natural, holistic remedies, alkaline diets. It's true. I know many people who have cured themselves through natural healing remedies. And we have to understand that NHS has been taken over by big pharmaceutical companies who are pushing their products. And I just want to end, I know you want to get me off, but I just want to add that please be aware that Reform UK is bankrolled by Aaron Banks, who is an insurance entrepreneur. No wonder they want to drive private medical insurance.
Okay.
Big corporate interests all the way throughout everything. Please, we have to wake up to what's going on.
If I have the time, do I have time for a one-sentence answer from each one? Yes. This is two very general questions, but are interconnected, which require only from you a one or a two-sentence response, John. I know you want to know what the result is, well, I'm not going to tell you. First of all, is Maggie Owen with us? Yeah. Microphone here, I think. Well, I'll tell you your question. Would you like me? I'll do it for you, Maggie, if you don't mind, because I've got it here. There is a level of distrust in politicians. Is it possible to remedy this? No, that's not my question. That's not your... That's your name, Maggie Owen.
No, I'm Maggie Norman.
You're Maggie Norman. Have I got Maggie Owen? Well, you've missed your chance. It's your question. I've just asked it for you. Okay. And the other is Jill Donnell-Hicks. Dare I read her question out? She's not here. Her question is this, or not a question, oh, well, it is. I feel deeply ashamed to be British. How will your party change that? I went that way. I'll go backwards. I'll start with you, Rachel. So is it possible to the remedy of what this question says is a level of distrust in politicians?
Yeah. And
one person feels shamed to be British, and what's to be done about it?
Yeah.
All of you, not just you, can I restrict you to a one or two answer thing? I know it's a bit glib, but we haven't got the time.
Yeah. So it is true, an Ipsos survey in 2023, 91% of the British people said that politicians are the least trusted profession in this country. And that's why there are 461 independent candidates like me who are not politicians, who are so fed up, we are self-funding to stand here and break this and pattern interrupt it and offer you a choice which isn't part of this shit show, to be quite frank. And let's restore pride in this country and let us restore the power to the people and take it away from the big corporations that are funding these party politics.
Very good. You managed that. I think it was two sentences. Yes.
Just to respond to that, we don't take the Green Party don't take money from corporates, so we're all funded by people as well, by real people. Yes, we can do better, but we've got to do things differently. And so I would be asking people to vote for the Green Party for real hope and real change.
Okay. John?
Yes, I'm determined that we can demonstrate that politicians are humans too, and respect to everyone up here for putting their heads above the parapet, because we need people to stand for office, regardless of what party it is. And in terms of being proud to be British, I just hope that you feel much better about this country on the 5th of July.
Well, the reason I've gone into politics is because I just despair about all the promises, and I don't see any evidence of them even being taken up and used. I just despair for democracy. I think it's at stake at the moment. It really is with politicians. I'm not from a political background. I'm a businessman. I think we need more businessmen in Parliament, less lawyers and less people that have just come straight from university to become politicians. And I think the whole country would be a better place for it. The second question was?
Ashamed to be British.
I'm incredibly proud to be British. I just think all the great achievements our country's done over the centuries, I think it starts in the schools. Goodness knows what the children are being taught. This slavery narrative.
So is that the question was, what would you do to change this feeling?
There's been a vibrant slave trade in Africa before Europeans ever got there. What about the Ottoman slave trade, the Arab slave trade? All we're doing is hitting our kids' heads with this nonsense.
We can keep talking over each other all the time, and neither of us will get anywhere.
Yeah.
The questioner has expressed the view that they feel ashamed of being British. Let you accept that there may be somebody that feels like that. What would you do to make them feel better? You've told us it, and you've related the history. I think
some incredible achievements throughout history.
You're going to get a paragraph and not sentences if we continue. Yes.
Everybody else elaborate.
As a non-politician, I came out of retirement from being previously a teacher and a head teacher because I looked at what was happening in our public life and I decided something needed to be done. And it needed to be done about trust, truth, integrity, mutual respect, in order to rebuild our relationship in the world, and may I say it as a former teacher, set a much better example to our children and young people.
Yeah, there's a famous saying, isn't there? I can't remember, I've been racking my brains who said it. If you do what you've always done, you get what you've always got. You might think that it's a bit of a risk voting for somebody like me who's never done anything like this before. But what I would commit to is something that would restore faith, trust in politics, clean up politics, modernise our democracy and fight corruption. So you may think I'm a risk, but I would urge you to consider what's the bigger risk, sticking with the status quo that's got us to the position that we're in, or actually going for it with some fresh blood. Thank you.
So.
I'm so sad that the questioner feels ashamed to be British, because I don't, and I'd like everybody to feel proud. I don't have any worries about that. I'm delighted that now we're able to talk about our history and we're able to share our Union flag. I'm delighted at Keir Starmer's using that in his campaign. I think it's fantastic. So I think Britain is the best country in the world. There's always room for improvement. But you know what? The people that I've been meeting on the doors for over the past 3 or 4 weeks, every morning, afternoon and evening, they're brilliant and they're British, they're proud of it. Of course there's room for improvement. How do you get trust back in Parliament? Well, you get a bit of Derbyshire Dales common sense and you take it up to Parliament. I've got the experience of that. I've spoken to the whole of the community and I work with other parties too. So how you get trust is to work hard, work with others and get the best you can for your constituents. And I'm sure everybody here agrees on that at least.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Trust.
Yes.
One of the big problems we have is since the 19... Have I got to push
it's working.
One of the big problems we have regarding trust is the fact that since the 1950s, we haven't actually had a government that's been elected by a majority of the voting population. Boris came close, but most of the time it's between 35 and 40% of the voting population. So if we want to get trust into politics, we need to change the system, and that probably means moving towards single transferable vote.
Okay, thank you. It's quite clear, and there were there was a question in that area, but I've got a plethora of questions here, and I just had to take what and try to get a spread so that people had an opportunity. I do apologise to anybody that I didn't spot and didn't get a chance to ask a question or a supplementary question, but like a politician, I'm human and I'm frail. Okay, we do our best. But I'd like to compliment our candidates this evening because, quite frankly, and I'm going to say this, I've watched debates on television, not just the leaders, but the others, the one underneath. And I've been appalled at the conduct there, shouting over each other, talking over each other, and the behaviour I felt was not conducive to an audience learning anything from them. I think tonight we've had an opportunity to see these candidates, to get to know what they're about and to hear from them. And quite frankly, for a public debate, I think all from Rachel, who told me at the beginning, she's independent, she's never been in this situation before, right through to experienced politicians around me. I think the behaviour has been almost impeccable. I have only one complaint, and that is there really should be more lawyers in the world, not less. But there we are. Thank you all very much. You can now go back and watch on iPlayer the replay of the match. Thank you.